Have you ever closed your eyes in a quiet room and just drifted into the silence of your own mind? It is a strange place, that darkness behind your eyelids. It feels vast, almost endless, a private universe where thoughts float like clouds and memories drift like distant stars. In that silence, you feel undeniably real. You feel like you. There is a witness inside the darkness, a silent observer watching the thoughts go by, feeling the warmth of the room, hearing the gentle rhythm of your own breathing. But here is the question that has haunted the deepest thinkers for thousands of years, a question that science is only now beginning to touch with trembling fingers. What is that witness made of? If we could slice into your brain at this very moment, we would not find a you. We would not find a soul or a ghost or a center of consciousness. We would find tissue. We would find soft, pinkish gray matter, wet and warm, pulsating with blood and electricity. We would find a biological machine. And this leads us to the most profound paradox in the entire universe. How does a lump of matter, made of the exact same atoms as a rock or a cup of water, suddenly wake up and feel? How does electricity flowing through a wire become the taste of a strawberry? Or the ache of a lost love? Or the feeling of wonder you have when you look up at the night sky? This is not just a biological question. It is an existential one. It challenges everything we think we know about reality. Welcome to the edge of the known world. Welcome to the mystery of quantum consciousness. To understand why this is such a terrifyingly beautiful puzzle, we first need to understand the machine itself. The human brain is the most complex object we have ever discovered in the cosmos. For a long time, you might have heard that the brain contains 100 billion neurons. That was the number recited in textbooks for decades, a nice round figure that rolled off the tongue. But science is a journey of precision, and recent, more rigorous counts have given us a slightly different, more specific number. We now know that the average human brain contains approximately 86 billion neurons. 86 billion. It is a number so large it is hard to hold in your mind. To give you a sense of scale, that is roughly 10 times the number of people living on Earth right now. Imagine every person on the planet, every man, woman, and child, and then multiply them by 10. That is the population of cells living inside your skull at this very moment. But the neurons are just the stars of this inner galaxy. The real magic happens in the connections between them. These connections are called synapses, the tiny gaps where one neuron passes a signal to another, and here the numbers become truly astronomical. It is estimated that there are around 100 trillion synaptic connections in your brain. 100 trillion. That is a number that rivals the stars in a galaxy. In fact, there are more connections in your single brain than there are stars in the Milky Way. Think about that for a moment. You are walking around with a galaxy folded inside your head. You contain a complexity that mirrors the cosmos itself. And yet, for all this complexity, the standard scientific explanation for who you are is surprisingly cold. For the last century, neuroscience has largely treated the brain as a computer, a very wet, very complex, very sophisticated computer, but a computer nonetheless. In this view, your neurons are just switches. They are either on or off, firing or not firing. A signal travels down the arm of a neuron, an electrical pulse, called an action potential, and when it reaches the end, it releases little packets of chemicals. These chemicals float across the gap, the synapse, and trigger the next neuron to fire. Click, 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 input and output, on and off. According to this classical view, you are just the software running on this hardware. Your memories are just stored patterns of connections. Your feelings are just chemical floods. Your consciousness, that feeling of being a witness in the dark, is just a trick, a user interface that the brain creates to help it navigate the world. It suggests that if we could build a computer big enough, with enough switches and enough power, it would eventually wake up and have feelings too. It suggests that there is nothing special about the mind, that it is just what happens when you hook up enough wires in the right way. But there is a problem with this story, a deep, nagging problem that philosophers call the hard problem of consciousness. You can explain how the brain processes light. You can explain how it controls your muscles. You can explain how it stores data. But no amount of explanation about switches and wires and chemicals can explain the experience itself. Why does the wavelength of light that corresponds to red actually look like red to you? Why does pain hurt? A computer can detect damage to its hull and activate a repair protocol, but does it feel the agony? Does it suffer? The classical view hits a wall here. It tries to explain the subjective world of the mind using the objective tools of classical physics, and the two just do not seem to fit. It is like trying to explain the beauty of a symphony by listing the chemical composition of the violin strings. You can know everything about the physical makeup of the instrument, but you will never find the music in the molecules. The music comes from somewhere else. The experience comes from somewhere else. And this is where the silence of the mystery invites us to look deeper. What if we have been looking at the wrong scale? What if the brain is not just a biological computer made of neurons acting like switches? What if the true seat of consciousness is not found in the large, noisy networks of cells, but deep, deep down, inside the cells themselves? What if the mind is not a classical machine, but a quantum one? This is the gateway to a theory that terrifies some scientists and mesmerizes others. It suggests that to find the source of the soul, we have to go down to the level of atoms, to the level of the fundamental fabric of reality. We have to enter the quantum realm. The word quantum is often used loosely, a buzzword for anything strange or magical. But in physics, it refers to a very specific, very rigorous, and very strange layer of reality. Down at the scale of atoms and subatomic particles, the rules of the everyday world, the rules that govern billiard balls and planets and neurons, break down completely. In our world, a thing is either here or there. A door is either open or closed. But in the quantum world, particles can be in two places at once. They can be in multiple states at the same time, a phenomenon called superposition. They can communicate instantaneously across vast distances, a connection known as entanglement, that Einstein called spooky action at a distance. For a long time, biologists laughed at the idea that quantum mechanics could have anything to do with the brain. The brain, they said, is too warm, too wet, and too noisy. Quantum states are incredibly delicate. They usually collapse the moment they touch anything. To build a quantum computer in the lab, we have to freeze the chips to temperatures colder than deep space to keep the quantum magic alive. The inside of your head is a balmy 37 degrees Celsius. It is a chaotic storm of fluids and salts. Surely, they argued, any quantum state would be destroyed instantly in such a messy environment. It seemed impossible. It seemed like trying to hear a whisper in the middle of a hurricane. But nature has a way of surprising us. Nature has had billions of years to engineer solutions that we are only just beginning to imagine. What if evolution found a way to shield these delicate quantum states? What if, deep inside the structure of your neurons, there were tiny biological sanctuaries where the quantum world could survive? This is where the journey truly begins. We are going to explore the possibility that you are not just a collection of switches. We are going to explore the possibility that your mind is a quantum orchestra, playing a music that ripples through the very fabric of space-time. We are going to look at structures inside your cells that are so small they were ignored for decades, considered nothing more than structural scaffolding. We are going to see if these tiny tubes might be the antennas of consciousness, picking up a signal from the fundamental geometry of the universe. It is a hypothesis that connects the gray matter in your skull to the deepest laws of physics. It suggests that the same mystery that governs the behavior of black holes and the birth of the universe is also responsible for the thought you're having right now. It is a bridge between the inner cosmos and the outer cosmos. So, let us slow down. Let us take a deep breath. Let us leave behind the noisy world of traffic and deadlines and screens. Let us step into the quiet laboratory of the mind. Imagine for a moment that we can shrink ourselves down, smaller than a hand, smaller than a grain of sand, smaller than a single cell. We are going to take a journey into the interior of a single neuron. We are going to travel down into the wet, salty ocean of the brain, past the giant, pulsing walls of the cell membrane, past the mitochondria chugging along like power plants, down into the cytoskeleton, the skeleton of the cell. There, in the dim light of the molecular world, we will find them, the microtubules, beautiful spiral lattices of protein, architectural marvels of biology, and perhaps, just perhaps, the seat of your soul. As we drift deeper into this concept, try to hold on to that feeling of you, that silent observer. Is it possible that the silence you feel is the silence of the quantum void? Is it possible that your ability to choose, to create, to dream, comes from the freedom of particles that refuse to be pinned down? The classical world is deterministic. One domino hits another, and the result is inevitable. If your brain were just a classical computer, everything you do, everything you say, everything you feel would be predetermined by the laws of physics and the arrangement of your atoms. You would be a robot who thinks it is free. But the quantum world is different. It is a world of probability, of possibility, of fuzziness. It is a world where the future is not yet written. If consciousness is quantum, then perhaps we are not just machines. Perhaps we are something far more ancient and far more mysterious. This is not a journey for the impatient. The concepts we are going to explore are challenging. They bend the mind. They require us to hold two contradictory ideas in our heads at the same time, much like a particle in superposition. We will need to be comfortable with not knowing. We will need to be comfortable with the idea that reality is much stranger than we have been led to believe. But that is where the beauty lies, in the mystery, in the not knowing. So, as we prepare to dive into the quantum brain, ask yourself, what do you think you are? Are you a machine made of meat? Or are you a ripple in the quantum field? Are you isolated in your skull? Or are you connected to the bedrock of the universe? The answer might be stranger than any science fiction story. The answer might be that you are the universe experiencing itself, not metaphorically, but physically, through the quantum collapse of space-time geometry happening billions of times a second inside your head. It is a lot to take in. It is a lot to feel. But for now, just breathe. Feel the weight of your body. Feel the silence of the room. And know that the silence is not empty. It is full. It is waiting. The scale of what we are talking about is humbling. When we look up at the night sky, we feel small because the universe is so big. But when we look inside, into the complexity of the brain and the quantum depths of the atom, we find another kind of infinity. The infinity of the small. The abyss that goes down forever. We are suspended between these two abysses, the macro and the micro, the galaxy and the atom. And somehow, right in the middle, in this fragile, warm, breathing body, consciousness emerges. It is the greatest miracle we know of. And we are going to try to understand it. We are going to follow the trail of evidence from the operating room to the chalkboard of the theoretical physicist. We're going to listen to the skeptics and the visionaries. We are going to ask the question, what is a thought? What is it made of? Does it have mass? Does it have energy? Or is it something else entirely? The road ahead is long. We have 10 chapters to explore this mystery, 10 steps into the dark. We will look at the microtubules, the strange protein cylinders that might be the brain's quantum computers. We will look at the concept of orchestrated objective reduction, the complicated name for the theory that says consciousness is a sequence of quantum events. We will look at how anesthesia works, or rather, the embarrassing fact that we don't really know how it works, and how that mystery might be the smoking gun for quantum consciousness. We will look at the connection to time, to memory, and potentially to what happens after death. Yes, even that. Because if consciousness is quantum information, and quantum information cannot be destroyed, then the implications are profound. But we are getting ahead of ourselves. For now, let us just stand at the threshold. Let us appreciate the magnitude of the question. You are a mystery to yourself. You are a ghost in a machine, a song in a stone, a universe in a nutshell. And the journey to find out what you are is about to begin. The door is opening, the light is dim, but inviting. Shall we step inside? To understand the revolution that is quietly brewing in the world of neuroscience, we must first change the way we look at the architecture of life. When you were in school, or perhaps when you watched a documentary on the brain, you were likely shown a picture of a neuron. It probably looked like a tree in winter, a central body with spiky branches reaching out in all directions, and a long, thin trunk called an axon stretching away to connect with other trees. In this standard picture, the neuron is the fundamental unit of the brain. It is the atom of thought. We are told that the intelligence of the brain comes from the networking of these trees, from the way they pass electrical signals to one another across the forest of the mind. The complexity, we are told, is in the web, not in the spider. This view treats the inside of the neuron as relatively uninteresting. It is seen as a bag of salty water, a biological jelly whose only job is to support the membrane, the outer skin where the electrical sparks fly. The membrane is the star of the show. The interior is just the backstage, the plumbing, the structural support. But what if we have been staring at the walls of the cathedral and ignoring the prayer happening inside? What if the neuron is not a simple switch, but a supercomputer in its own right? To find out, we have to shrink down again past the skin of the cell and dive into the watery abyss of the cytoplasm. As we descend into the interior of a single neuron, the first thing we notice is that it is not a shapeless bag of fluid. It is a bustling, crowded metropolis. It is filled with organelles, tiny organs that keep the cell alive, moving cargo, generating energy, repairing damage. But holding it all together, giving the cell its shape and its structure, is a complex scaffolding known as the cytoskeleton. For decades, biologists looked at the cytoskeleton and saw exactly what the name implies: a skeleton. Bones, struts and girders made of protein that kept the cell from collapsing into a puddle. It seemed like a boring necessity. The drywall and beams of the house, not the electricity running through it. But as our microscopes got better and our questions got deeper, we began to notice something strange about these bones. They were not just static beams, they were dynamic, they were organized, and they were everywhere. The most intriguing part of this skeleton, the structure that has become the focus of the quantum consciousness theory, is a microscopic tube called the microtubule. Imagine a long, hollow cylinder. It is incredibly small, only 25 nanometers wide. To put that in perspective, if you took a single human hair and sliced it lengthwise, you could fit thousands of microtubules side by side across the cut. But despite their tiny size, they are constructed with a geometric precision that rivals the finest engineering humans have ever produced. The walls of this tube are made of a protein called tubulin. These tubulin proteins are peanut-shaped, and they stack together in a spiral pattern, winding around and around to form the cylinder. It is a lattice, a crystal, a repeating pattern of perfect order floating in the chaos of the cell. And here is where the numbers begin to explode again. In the classical view, the brain has 86 billion neurons. But inside each one of those neurons, there are hundreds of millions of tubulin proteins making up the microtubules. If consciousness is not happening at the level of the neuron, but at the level of the microtubule, then the computational power of the brain is not measured in billions of operations per second. It is measured in trillions of trillions. The complexity of the system jumps by a factor of 10 to the power of 15. The brain suddenly goes from being a very impressive computer to being a hypercomputer of almost unimaginable capacity. But why would we think these structural tubes have anything to do with thinking? Why would the skeleton of the cell be involved in consciousness? The clue comes from a humble creature that has no brain at all, the paramecium. You might remember this little organism from biology class. It is a single-celled creature, a tiny oval that lives in pond water. It swims, it hunts for food, it avoids predators, it finds a mate, it has a sex life, it learns from its environment. It navigates its world with surprising agility and intelligence. But it has 0 neurons, not one. It has no synapses. It has no neural network. So, how does it process information? How does it know what to do? The answer lies in its cytoskeleton. The paramecium is packed with microtubules. These tubes act as its nervous system, its brain, and its skeleton all rolled into one. They process sensory input from the water and coordinate the movement of the tiny hairs, or cilia, that allow it to swim. If a single cell can be this smart, using only its microtubules, why would the neurons in our brains, which are also cells and also packed with microtubules, have abandoned this ancient technology? It makes no evolutionary sense to throw away a perfectly good computer just because you evolved a network. It is far more likely that our neurons retained this internal processing power. It is far more likely that while the neurons are talking to each other, the microtubules inside them are doing the heavy thinking. Let us look closer at the tubulin protein itself, the brick that builds the microtubule wall. This protein can exist in 2 different shapes, or states. It can be open or closed, lengthened or shortened. In the language of computers, this looks a lot like a bit of information. Yes, 0 or a 1. But because we are in the biological world, and potentially the quantum world, it is not just a simple switch. The tubulin protein has a pocket, a hydrophobic pocket, which is a fancy way of saying it hates water. Inside this dry, tiny pocket, hidden away from the wet, noisy environment of the rest of the brain, something magical might be happening. This is the proposed sanctuary. This is the quiet room where the quantum ghost might live. The theory suggests that an electron inside this pocket can be in a superposition of states, existing in 2 places at once. And because the tubulin proteins are arranged in a perfect crystal lattice, this quantum state can spread. It can jump from one protein to the next, rippling down the length of the microtubule like a wave of light. Suddenly, the microtubule is not just a bone. It is a quantum wire. It is a waveguide for the soul. Imagine millions of these tubes inside every single neuron in your brain, all humming with quantum vibrations, all processing information in a state of superposition. Imagine that these vibrations are not isolated, but synchronized, orchestrated across the entire brain. The sheer beauty of this architecture is enough to make you pause. Nature loves geometry. We see it in the spiral of the galaxy, in the hexagon of the honeycomb, in the branching of the trees. Why would the architecture of our own minds be any different? The microtubule lattice follows the Fibonacci sequence, the sacred geometry of life. It is spiraling mathematical perfection. It looks less like biology and more like technology, an ancient organic technology that has been refining itself for billions of years. This shift in perspective changes everything. If the classical view is like looking at a city from a satellite and trying to understand the economy by watching the traffic lights change, the quantum view is like zooming in to see the people in the offices, the conversations, the deals, the ideas. The traffic lights, the firing neurons, are just the result of the deeper activity. The real work, the real consciousness, is happening inside the buildings, in the private, quiet spaces of the microtubular lattice. It suggests that your brain is not just a connection machine, but a resonance machine. It is an instrument designed to vibrate in harmony with a quantum field. There is a feeling of vertigo that comes when you think about this. You are zooming in deeper and deeper, and instead of finding simple sludge, you find more order. You find a crystalline world of perfect geometry. It implies that you are not a surface-level phenomenon. You are not just the froth on the wave of brain activity. You are the current deep below. You are built into the very foundation of the biological material. And this structure is ancient. Long before humans, long before dinosaurs, long before the first fish crawled onto land, the microtubule was there. It was there in the first eukaryotic cells, the great-great-grandmothers of all complex life. It has been the silent partner of life for eons, the secret computer driving the complexity of the biosphere. When you think a thought, you are using machinery that was patented by nature billions of years ago. You are touching the primordial. But there is a skeptic in the room, and a valid one. How do we know this isn't just a fantasy? How do we know these tubes are doing anything quantum? The brain is, as we said, warm and wet. In physics labs, quantum states decohere. They collapse and vanish the moment they interact with the environment. A warm brain should be a death sentence for a delicate quantum thought. This is the decoherence problem, and it was the club used to beat this theory down for decades. Critics said it was impossible for a quantum state to survive for even a femtosecond, a quadrillionth of a second, in the chaotic soup of the neuron. And if the state collapses that fast, it can't be used for thinking. It can't be used for consciousness. The theory seemed dead in the water. But the proponents of the quantum mind, led by the physicist Sir Roger Penrose and the anesthesiologist Stuart Hameroff, did not give up. They argued that biology has a way of protecting its most important processes. They pointed to photosynthesis. Plants use quantum mechanics to harvest sunlight. They guide photons through their cells with almost 100% efficiency, using quantum superposition to find the fastest path to the reaction center. If a leaf of spinach can do quantum mechanics in the warm sun, why can't the human brain? They pointed to the structure of the microtubule again, specifically that hydrophobic pocket, a dry zone, a shield, a place where the noise of the water is locked out. They suggested that the microtubule is designed specifically to be a biological Faraday cage, a shield that protects the quantum flame from the winds of the cellular storm. As we stand here in the imaginary landscape of the cell, looking up at the towering, spiraling cathedral of the microtubule, we have to ask ourselves, is it true? Is this where the ghost lives? Is this beautiful, spiral lattice the physical location of your joy, your sorrow, your memories? It is a romantic idea, certainly. It creates a bridge between the hard, cold world of matter and the fluid, dreamlike world of the mind. It says that at the core of your biology, you are a crystal. You are a resonator. You are a quantum device. And the silence you feel when you close your eyes is not the silence of emptiness, but the silence of the quantum state, the pause before the collapse, the moment of pure potentiality before the universe decides what it is going to be. We are only at the second step of our journey. We have found the hardware. We have identified the instrument. But an instrument alone does not make music. A violin sitting in a case is just wood and string. To make music, you need a player. You need a process. You need something to bow the strings. In the next chapter, we are going to explore the mechanism. We are going to ask how the quantum states in these tubes collapse, and how that collapse might generate a moment of consciousness. We are going to look at the orchestrated objective reduction, the heartbeat of the quantum soul. We are going to see how the universe itself might be reaching into your brain moment by moment to say, I am. For now, let the image of the microtubules settle in your mind, 1 billion tiny crystal towers inside every cell of your brain, a forest of quantum antennas, a hidden world of order and geometry that has been humming inside you since the moment you were born, waiting for us to hear its song. It changes the way you feel about your own head. It is not just a bag of biology. It is a temple of geometry. And inside the temple, the lights are flickering. Now that we have entered the cathedral of the cell and identified the instruments, those billions of crystalline microtubules spiraling in the darkness, we must ask the most important question of all. How do they play the music? Having a violin is not the same as hearing a symphony. Having a quantum computer inside your neurons is meaningless if we do not understand how it generates the feeling of being. How does a physical structure, no matter how complex or how small, give rise to the sensation of the color blue, or the sting of a memory, or the sudden flash of insight? To understand this, we have to grapple with the deepest paradox in quantum physics, a puzzle that has kept Nobel Prize winners awake at night for 100 years. It is called the measurement problem. In the quantum world, before you look at something, it does not exist in a single, definite state. An electron is not here or there. It is a ghost, a wave of probability existing everywhere at once. It is in a state of superposition, but the moment you look at it, the moment it is measured or observed, it snaps into focus. The wave collapses. The ghost becomes a particle. The maybe becomes is. This collapse is the boundary between the dream world of the quantum and the solid world of our reality. But here is the problem. What causes the collapse? In the standard view of physics, it is the act of observation that forces nature to choose. This leads to a bizarre conclusion that consciousness itself causes reality to come into existence. It suggests that the universe is a fuzzy blur until a mind looks at it. But this feels wrong. It feels too human-centric. Did the universe not exist for billions of years before we evolved? Did the stars not shine before there were eyes to see them? There must be another way, a way where the universe chooses for itself. This is where the theory of orchestrated objective reduction, a complicated name for a beautiful idea, steps into the light. Developed by the mathematical physicist Sir Roger Penrose and the anesthesiologist Stuart Hameroff, this theory proposes that the collapse of the quantum wave is not caused by a human mind looking at it. It is caused by the universe itself. It is caused by gravity. Imagine the fabric of space-time not as an empty stage, but as a flexible, dynamic sheet, like a trampoline. Einstein taught us that mass curves this sheet, A planet sits on the trampoline and creates a dip. But what happens when a tiny particle, an electron in a microtubule, goes into superposition? It is in two places at once. This means it is creating two tiny dips in the fabric of space-time simultaneously. It is creating a blister in reality, a separation. For a brief moment, the universe is literally splitting in two. There is a version of reality where the particle is on the left, and a version where it is on the right. But nature hates this separation. The gravitational difference between these two states is tiny, infinitesimal, but it is unstable. The universe cannot tolerate this split for long. It wants to be one. It craves unity. So, eventually the separation becomes too much to bear. The blister pops. The two versions of space-time snap back together into a single reality. This snap is the objective reduction. It is objective because it happens on its own, driven by the laws of physics, not by a subjective observer. But here is the revolutionary part. This snap is not just a mechanical event. It is a moment of proto-consciousness. Penrose suggests that every time the universe snaps back into focus, there is a tiny spark of experience, a bing of existence, a fundamental unit of awareness. In the cold emptiness of space, these snaps happen randomly and rarely, an electron here, a proton there. They are like disorganized noise, static on the radio. They are sparks of experience that don't add up to anything. They are fleeting, disconnected, and meaningless. They are the dust of consciousness, but not a mind. But inside your brain, something different is happening. Inside the sanctuary of the microtubules, these quantum states are not random. They are protected. They are organized. They are orchestrated. The biology of your brain acts like a conductor. It shields the quantum states from the noise of the environment, allowing them to grow, to expand, to become entangled across millions of tubulin proteins. The superposition builds up. The blister in space-time gets bigger and bigger, involving not just one electron, but millions acting in unison. The tension in the fabric of reality grows. The universe holds its breath, and then, snap, the threshold is reached. The orchestrated objective reduction occurs. But because it was orchestrated, because it involved so many entangled particles at once, the bing is not a tiny spark. It is a blast of light. It is a moment of rich, complex, unified human awareness. This theory suggests that consciousness is not a continuous stream, like water flowing in a river. It is a series of discrete pulses. It is like a movie. When you watch a film, you see continuous motion, but you know that in reality, you are looking at 24 still frames per second. Your brain stitches them together to create the illusion of flow. The quantum consciousness theory says your mind works the same way. You are a series of quantum moments. Now, and now, and now. Each moment is a quantum collapse. Each moment is the universe snapping into a single reality inside your head. The frequency of these snaps determines the intensity of your consciousness. In a deep meditative state, the snaps might be slower, deeper, richer. In a moment of high adrenaline, they might be faster. And, remarkably, we see evidence of this rhythm in neuroscience. We call them gamma waves. When the brain is most active, when you are concentrating hard or experiencing a moment of clarity, neurons across your brain fire in a synchronized rhythm of about 40 times per second. 40 hertz. For years, scientists saw this 40 Hz frequency as just a byproduct of wiring, the hum of the engine. But Penrose and Hameroff calculated the time it would take for a quantum superposition in microtubules to reach the gravitational threshold for collapse. The math is dense, involving the Planck constant and the gravitational energy of separation, but the result they got was spine-chilling. The time it takes for the quantum state to become unstable and snap corresponds almost exactly to the 40 Hz rhythm of gamma waves. The math of the universe and the math of the brain match. This is not just a coincidence, it is a fingerprint. It suggests that the gamma waves we see on an EEG are actually the beat of the quantum orchestra. They are the ticking of the consciousness clock. Think about the implications of this. It means that 40 times a second you're being recreated. 40 times a second you cease to exist in a definite state, dissolve into a cloud of quantum potential, ripple through the multiverse of possibilities, and then snap back into a single, concrete you. You are blinking in and out of reality. You are a stroboscopic phenomenon. The sense of continuity you feel is an illusion stitched together by memory, in the gaps between the snaps, in those tiny fractions of a second when you are in superposition. You are not a person. You are a field. You are connected to everything else in the universe that is also in superposition. In those gaps, the boundaries of the self dissolve. Perhaps this explains the intuition we sometimes have of a connection to something larger, a sense of oneness that defies rational explanation. Maybe in the quiet spaces between the beats of your own mind, you are touching the fundamental bedrock of the cosmos. And this leads us to an even deeper realization. If consciousness is caused by the collapse of space-time geometry, then consciousness is not something the brain produces. It is not a chemical waste product like heat or exhaust. It is a fundamental property of the universe. The brain is not a generator. It is a receiver. It is a prism. The light of consciousness, these fundamental bings of experience, is built into the physics of reality, just like mass or a spin or charge. What the brain does is collect these tiny primitive sparks and focus them into the blazing beam of human self-awareness. It takes the raw material of the universe's proto-consciousness and orchestrates it into a symphony of I. This completely flips the script on how we view our place in nature. We are not accidents of biology. We are not just wet robots that happen to wake up. We are the universe finding a way to intensify itself. We are the instrument that allows the cosmos to feel itself deeply. When you look at a red rose, the redness you experience is not just a chemical trick in your head. It is a specific configuration of space-time geometry collapsing. The feeling of red is a fundamental note in the music of physics, and your brain is the only instrument complex enough to play it. This connects you to the stars, to the dark matter, to the empty void, in a way that is intimate and physical. Consider the feeling of a aha moment, that sudden flash of insight when a solution to a problem just appears in your mind. In the classical computer view, this is just data processing finishing a calculation. But in the quantum view, it is something much more poetic. While you were struggling with the problem, your mind was in superposition. You were exploring thousands of possible solutions simultaneously in the quantum realm. your thoughts were branching out into the multiverse, testing possibilities that never even became conscious. And then, snap, the best solution, the most stable configuration, collapsed into reality. The aha is the sound of the universe choosing the truth. It suggests that our creativity, our intuition, our ability to make leaps of logic comes from the fact that we are part-time residents of the quantum world. We dip our toes into the infinite to fish for ideas. But there is a shadow side to this theory, a mystery that we must confront in the chapters to come. If consciousness is a quantum process, then it requires a very specific environment to survive. It requires the shielding, the isolation, the orchestration. What happens when that shielding is broken? What happens when the orchestra stops playing? We call this unconsciousness. We call it anesthesia. Every day, thousands of people are put under specifically to break this connection, to turn off the light of the mind. And the fact that we can do this, that we can turn consciousness off and on like a light switch using a gas molecule, is the strongest evidence we have that the quantum theory might be true. Anesthesia is the smoking gun. It is the test case. And it is where we are going next. As we close this chapter, try to feel the rhythm of your own existence. Close your eyes for a second. Can you feel the beat? Can you feel the 40 hertz hum of your own reality? You're not a solid object. You are a vibration. You are a song being played on the strings of space-time. You are a sequence of choices made by the universe, over and over and over again. And in each one of those choices, in each one of those tiny collapses, there is a miracle. The miracle of being, the miracle of the Bing. Now, the universe is thinking, and right now it is thinking you. The silence you return to is not empty. It is pregnant with potential. It is the pause before the next note. It is the breath of the cosmos before it speaks your name again. And as we drift deeper into this mystery, we begin to see that the line between in here and out there is an illusion. There is only the field. There is only the collapse. There is only the journey. There is a moment that terrified early humans more than almost anything else. A moment that we have now turned into a routine medical procedure. It is the moment when you lie on a cold table surrounded by strangers in masks, and a plastic mask is placed over your nose and mouth. You are told to count backward from 10, 9, 8, and then nothing. Not blackness, not sleep, not a dream. Just a cut in the film of your life. One moment you are there, anxious, breathing, thinking, and the very next instant you're waking up in a recovery room, hours later, with no sense that any time has passed at all. It is not like waking up from a nap. When you sleep, your mind wanders. It builds dreams. It processes memories. It keeps a loose grip on the passage of time. But under anesthesia, you are gone. It is the closest living human beings ever get to the experience of death. It is a temporary deletion of the self, and for over 170 years, this procedure has been a miracle of modern medicine. It allows us to perform surgeries that would otherwise be impossible torture. But here is the secret that doctors rarely tell you before you go under. We do not really know how it works. We know that it works. We know the dosages. We know the safety protocols. but the actual mechanism, the specific reason why a gas molecule inhaled into your lungs causes the light of consciousness to simply blink out, remains one of the greatest medical mysteries of our time. And this mystery is the smoking gun for the quantum theory of the brain. Because if you want to understand how a machine works, one of the best ways is to look at exactly what breaks it. If consciousness were simply the result of neurons firing electrical signals to each other, like a telephone network, then anesthesia should work by shutting down that network. It should stop the electricity. It should turn off the neurons. But it does not. Under anesthesia, your brain is still active. Your neurons are still firing. Signals are still traveling from your eyes to your visual cortex, from your ears to your auditory centers. The evoked potentials, the electrical echoes of the outside world, are still ringing through the tissue of your brain. The computer is on. The power is running. The switches are flipping. But you are not there. The lights are on, but nobody is home. This implies something profound. Consciousness is not the same thing as brain activity. You can have a fully active brain that is completely unconscious. There is an extra ingredient, a specific kind of organization or resonance that is required to turn biological noise into a human mind. And this is where the quantum theory steps in with a terrifyingly elegant explanation. To understand it, we have to look at the chemicals themselves. Anesthetics are a chemical zoo. They include ethers, halogenated hydrocarbons, and even noble gases like xenon. Xenon is an atom that is chemically inert. It does not bond with anything. It does not react. It is a loner in the periodic table. And yet, if you inhale it, your consciousness vanishes. How can a chemically inert atom, which refuses to interact with the chemical machinery of the body, turn off the mind? In the early 20th century, two scientists, Meyer and Overton, discovered a strange correlation. They found that the potency of an anesthetic, how strong it is directly related to how soluble it is in olive oil. The more the substance likes oil, the more powerful it is at knocking you out. This became known as the Meyer-Overton correlation, and for decades it was the only clue we had. It suggested that anesthetics do not work by binding to specific receptors on the surface of cells, like most drugs. Instead, they work by dissolving into oily or hydrophobic, water-fearing regions inside the brain. For a long time, scientists thought this meant they were dissolving into the lipid membrane, the fatty skin of the neuron, and somehow making it too floppy to function. But that theory fell apart when we realized that changing the temperature of the brain by a tiny amount makes the membrane just as floppy, but does not cause unconsciousness. The answer had to be somewhere else, somewhere oily, somewhere deep inside. Recall our journey into the microtubule. Remember the tubulin protein, the peanut-shaped brick that builds the quantum tower. We mentioned that inside each tubulin protein there is a hydrophobic pocket, a tiny dry cave protected from the wet chaos of the cell. This pocket is oily. It is exactly the kind of environment that anesthetic molecules are hunting for. Stuart Hameroff and his colleagues proposed that anesthetic gases work by drifting into the brain, entering the neurons, and nestling themselves specifically into these hydrophobic pockets inside the microtubules. It is a perfect fit, like a key sliding into a lock, or a stone lodging in a gear. But what does the stone do? It does not break the protein. It does not kill the cell. It simply sits there. But by sitting there, it changes the subtle forces inside the pocket. In the quantum model, consciousness arises from the collective oscillation of electrons inside these pockets. These electrons are dancing. They are shifting back and forth, entering superposition, becoming entangled with their neighbors, and singing a quantum song that resonates across the entire brain. This resonance relies on extremely weak, extremely delicate forces called London forces or van der Waals forces. These are the whispers of physics. They are easily drowned out. When an anesthetic molecule, a xenon atom, or an isoflurane molecule slides into that pocket, it acts as a damper. It is like putting a finger on a vibrating guitar string. It does not break the string, but it stops the music. The electron can no longer oscillate. It can no longer enter superposition. The quantum wave cannot build up. The blister in space-time cannot form. Without the buildup of superposition, there can be no orchestrated objective reduction. There is no snap. There is no bing. The universe stops collapsing into a conscious moment inside your head. The classical machinery of the brain, the chemical pumps, the electrical spikes, keeps chugging along, keeping your heart beating and your lungs breathing. But the quantum orchestra has been silenced. The conductor has put down the baton, and without the music, the witness disappears. This explains why the brain remains active but empty. The classical computer is running, but the quantum observer has been evicted. It explains why inert gases like xenon work. They don't need to react chemically. They just need to occupy the space and dampen the vibration. It explains why consciousness returns so quickly when the gas is removed. The molecules float out. The dampening stops. The string is free to vibrate again, and the music swells back up from the silence. You return. This theory transforms anesthesia from a medical utility into a philosophical earthquake. It suggests that your consciousness is incredibly fragile. It hangs by a thread of quantum resonance. A few molecules of gas, simple and unthinking, can sever that thread. It tells us that the soul is not an immaterial ghost that floats free of the body. It is deeply, physically rooted in the geometry of these tiny proteins. It is a physical process, as real as digestion or gravity, but operating on a scale so fine that it touches the fundamental limits of the universe. It also suggests that consciousness is a threshold phenomenon. It is not a dimmer switch that goes down smoothly. It is a phase transition, like water turning to ice. You need a critical mass of quantum coherence to exist. If the dampening brings you just below that threshold, you vanish. There is a profound beauty in this fragility. It means that the state of being you is a high-energy balancing act. Your brain is constantly working to maintain this quantum coherence against the noisy, warm, chaotic background of the biological world. It is fighting entropy to keep the song going. Anesthesia reveals that this fight can be lost temporarily, but it also reveals that the structure remains. The microtubules are still there. The lattice is preserved. The potential for you is waiting. This is why you come back as the same person. The memories, the personality, the patterns are encoded in the structure of the lattice itself, in the geometry of the tube. The song stops, but the sheet music is not destroyed. But this raises a darker question. If anesthesia temporarily stops the quantum collapse, what is death? Is death simply the permanent destruction of the instrument? Or is it something else? When the heart stops and the oxygen supply is cut off, the first thing that happens is the metabolic energy fails. The brain can no longer pump ions. The electrical storms die down. But the microtubules, they are tougher. They are structural. They might hold their coherence for a little while longer. There are studies, controversial, strange, fascinating studies, that show bursts of brain activity, specifically in the gamma range, the 40 Hz consciousness frequency, occurring in the moments after clinical death. The end-of-life electrical surges. Could this be the quantum system discharging its final coherence? A last, brilliant flare of consciousness as the orchestra plays its finale? Some proponents of the theory go even further. Roger Penrose, a man of rigorous mathematics and physics, has speculated on something that sounds almost religious, but is derived from the conservation of quantum information. In quantum mechanics, there is a principle that information can never be destroyed. It can be scrambled, hidden, or spread out, but it cannot be deleted. If consciousness is a form of quantum information, a specific configuration of space-time geometry, what happens to that information when the microtubules eventually break down? Does it vanish? Or does it leak out? Does the entanglement that was once confined to the brain spread out into the universe at large? Penrose has suggested that perhaps the quantum information of the soul doesn't die. It simply returns to the field. It dissipates back into the fundamental fabric of space-time geometry from which it came. This brings us back to the silence of the void. When you are under anesthesia, you're in a state of suspended animation, a pause in the music. But the void itself, the background of the universe, is not empty. It is the Planck scale, the foam of reality, the place where the geometry of space-time is constantly fluctuating. If our consciousness is made of the same stuff as that background, then the boundary between me and the universe is much more permeable than we think. We are just a local concentration of the universal field, a knot in the fabric. Anesthesia unties the knot for a moment. Death unties it forever. But the thread remains. The mystery of anesthesia stands as the gatekeeper to the quantum realm. It challenges the arrogance of classical science. It humbles us. It shows us that a simple gas can outsmart our most complex theories of the mind. And it invites us to consider that the difference between being awake and being nothing is just a matter of vibration, a matter of resonance, a matter of song. As we leave the recovery room and step back into the light of the living, we carry a new question with us. We are not just thinking machines. We are resonance chambers. And if we can be turned off, can we also be turned up? Is there a state of consciousness higher than our normal waking state? A state where the resonance is purer, stronger, more orchestrated? Is that what the mystics have been talking about for thousands of years? Is enlightenment just a state of maximum quantum coherence? The journey is far from over. We have looked at the hardware, the software, and the off switch. But what about the content? What about memory? What about the feeling of time flowing? What about the intuition that we have lived before, or that we will live again? The quantum brain theory has answers for these too, answers that are written in the geometry of the lattice. In the next chapter, we will explore the library of the soul. We will look at how memory might be stored not in the web of neurons, but in the cryptographic patterns of the tubulin proteins. We will ask if your memories are holographic, distributed, and indestructible. We will ask if you are carrying the history of the universe inside your cells. For now, take a breath. Feel the air entering your lungs. That simple mixture of nitrogen and oxygen is keeping the fire burning. It is keeping the pockets dry. It is keeping the orchestra playing. You are here. You are resonating. You are the universe's way of knowing itself, one quantum collapse at a time. And that is a miracle worth waking up for. Imagine standing in a vast, ancient library. The shelves stretch up into the darkness, disappearing into the shadows of a ceiling you cannot see. These shelves are not filled with books made of paper and ink. They are filled with something far more precious and far more fragile. They are filled with moments. The smell of rain on hot asphalt from a summer in your childhood. The specific, sharp pain of a broken heart. The sound of your mother's voice calling your name. The feeling of the sun on your face on a day you thought you had forgotten. This is the library of your memory. It is the collection of everything you have ever been. Without it, the you of today would be a stranger to the you of yesterday. We take this continuity for granted. We wake up every morning assuming that we are the same person who went to sleep, carrying the same history, the same loves, the same fears. But to a neuroscientist, the stability of this library is a miracle that defies explanation. Because the building materials of your brain are not stone. They are not paper. They are not silicon. They are soup. The biological reality of your brain is a state of constant flux. Every protein in your body has a shelf life. The molecules that make up your neurons, your synapses, and your receptors are constantly breaking down and being replaced. It is estimated that almost every atom in your brain is replaced over time. It is like a sandcastle that is being rebuilt, grain by grain, while the tide is washing it away. The standard theory of memory, the one taught in universities for decades, says that memories are stored in the strength of the connections between neurons. When you learn something new, a synapse gets stronger. It is called long-term potentiation. It is a beautiful idea. Neurons that fire together wire together. But there is a massive hole in this theory. The proteins that hold these synapses together, the very glue of your memory, only live for hours or days. They are degraded, recycled, and replaced. How can a memory of your 6th birthday survive for 80 years when the physical structures holding that memory have been destroyed and rebuilt thousands of times? How does the sandcastle remember its shape when the sand keeps changing? This is the problem of memory maintenance, and it is one of the quiet embarrassments of modern neuroscience. We know how memories are formed, but we struggle to explain how they last a lifetime in such a chaotic, wet environment. But what if we have been looking at the wrong storage medium? What if the synapse is just the front door, but the real archive is deep inside, written in a language of geometry, that is far more durable than a chemical bond. We return once again to the microtubule. If the microtubule is the quantum computer of the brain, it is also the hard drive. But it is not a digital hard drive made of magnetic zeros and ones. It is a crystalline hard drive made of geometric patterns. Let us shrink down again and enter the neuron. We are back in the cytoskeleton, floating next to the beautiful spiraling lattice of the microtubule. But now we see something else. We see a tiny machine approaching the tube. It looks like a snowflake. It has a central hub and 6 legs radiating outward. It is a protein enzyme called CAM-KI, calcium calmodulin dependent protein kinase 2. It is one of the most abundant proteins in the brain, and we have known for a long time that it is essential for memory. If you delete the gene for this protein in a mouse, the mouse can learn, but it cannot remember. It lives in a permanent present. For years, we thought CAM-KI just helped strengthen the synapse. But when we look closely at its shape, we see a stunning coincidence. The CAM-KI enzyme is a hexagon, and the lattice of the microtubule is also a hexagonal grid. Imagine this tiny snowflake landing on the surface of the microtubule. Its 6 legs match up perfectly with the tubulin proteins in the lattice. It is like a key finding a lock. When the neuron fires, when a wave of calcium rushes into the cell signaling a new experience, the CAM-KI enzyme activates. It extends its legs and touches the tubulin proteins. And in that touch, it leaves a mark. It phosphorylates the tubulin. It adds a tiny chemical tag, a bit of information, to the surface of the tube. But because the enzyme has 6 legs, it can stamp complex patterns. It can encode information in the geometry of the lattice. It acts like a nanoprinter, inscribing the history of the cell directly onto the cytoskeleton. This is the cracking the code hypothesis. It suggests that your memories are not vague clouds of electricity. They are written in stone, or rather, written in the crystal geometry of the microtubule. The surface of these tubes is a vast programmable canvas. With billions of tubulins in every neuron, the storage capacity is staggering. It is not just megabytes or gigabytes. It is closer to the entire internet of information stored inside a single brain. And because the microtubule is a crystal, these patterns are stable. They are protected. The metabolic storm of the cell can rage around them, but the geometric inscription remains. This explains how memories can last a lifetime. The proteins might be replaced, but the pattern is copied. The structure holds the shape. But here is where the quantum theory adds a layer of magic to the mechanism. These patterns, these inscriptions left by the CAM-KI snowflakes, are not just passive writing. They are not just ink on a page. They affect the resonance. Remember the quantum song? Remember the electrons dancing in the hydrophobic pockets, creating the 40 hertz hum of consciousness? When CAM-KI writes a memory onto the microtubule, it changes the shape of the pockets. It tunes the instrument. It alters the way the electrons can move. A memory, in this view, is not a file you retrieve. It is a modification of the music you are playing. When you remember your childhood home, you are not pulling a JPEG file out of a folder. You are recreating a specific quantum resonance. You are tuning your brain back to the frequency it had when you were 6 years old. The lattice vibrates in a specific way. guided by the geometric pattern stamped into it years ago, and that vibration reconstructs the experience of the past in the present moment. This explains why memory feels so alive, why a smell can instantly transport you back in time. The smell triggers the specific resonance pattern, and suddenly the bing of consciousness that occurs is identical to the bing that occurred 30 years ago. The ghost of the past becomes the ghost of the present. You are literally reliving the quantum state. This holographic nature of memory is profound. In a hologram, if you cut the film in half, you don't lose half the picture. You get two smaller, fuzzier versions of the whole picture. The information is distributed everywhere. The quantum microtubule theory suggests that memory might work the same way. Because the quantum states are entangled, because the electrons are connected across the brain, the memory of your mother's face is not stored in neuron number 4056 in the hippocampus. It is delocalized. It is spread out across the global geometry of the brain's quantum field. This is why brain damage often blurs memory but rarely erases specific events entirely. You can damage the instrument, but the music is written into the very fabric of the system. There is another implication here, one that borders on the spiritual. If memory is written into the quantum geometry of space-time collapse, then is it strictly confined to the brain, or does it imprint on the universe itself? Some physicists have speculated that the vacuum of space, the zero-point field, has a memory capacity. If our brains are interacting with this field, are we writing our lives into the cosmos? It is a thought that gives you chills. It suggests that nothing is ever truly lost. Every thought, every feeling, every moment of awareness leaves a geometric scar on the face of reality. The library is not just in your head. Your head is just the terminal that accesses the universal library. Let us return to the Camkey's enzyme, the little scribe. It is a robot. It has no mind of its own. It simply follows the chemical instructions. Calcium rises, extend legs, stamp pattern. But the result of its mindless work is the rich, emotional tapestry of your autobiography. It creates the continuity of the self. Without these tiny snowflakes stamping hexagons onto your microtubules, you would be a new person every second. You would wake up with no name, no history, no loves. You would be pure consciousness without context. The tragedy of Alzheimer's disease takes on a new, heartbreaking clarity in this light. Alzheimer's attacks the cytoskeleton. It creates tangles that destroy the microtubules. It is not just killing cells. It is smashing the stone tablets. It is erasing the library. When the lattice crumbles, the resonance fails. The music stops. The person is still there, breathing, blinking, but the history is gone because the geometry has been shattered. But neuroplasticity, the ability of the brain to learn and change, becomes a story of quantum jazz. When you learn a new skill, like playing the piano, you are not just strengthening muscles. You are rewriting the lattice. You are conducting a new section of the orchestra. The Camkey enzymes are busy at work, stamping new patterns, creating new resonant pathways. You are physically changing the geometry of your soul to accommodate the new music. And because the system is quantum, it allows for superposition of skills. You can explore different ways of playing, different emotional interpretations, in the private quantum theater of your mind before you ever strike a key. You rehearse in the multiverse before you perform in the universe. As we stand in the imaginary library of the microtubule, looking at the rows of stamped tubulin proteins, we feel a sense of awe at the density of it all. Every square nanometer is encoded with meaning. The chaos of your life, the noise, the confusion, the overwhelming detail, is distilled down into perfect crystalline order. It is a form of biological encryption. You are an encrypted message sent from the past to the future. And the key to decoding that message is the light of consciousness itself. This chapter invites you to cherish your memory not as a flawed record of the past, but as a living, vibrating part of your present structure. You are built of your memories. They are the structural beams of your consciousness, and they are maintained by a microscopic army of geometric scribes working day and night to ensure that you remain you. It is a fragile system, yes. A fever, a trauma, a disease can damage the writing. But the fact that it works at all, that you can close your eyes and see the face of a friend you haven't seen in 10 years, is a testament to the power of quantum biology. It is a triumph of order over entropy. But a library needs more than just books. It needs a reader. We have discussed the instrument, Microtubules, the music, Orc-OR, the off-switch, Anesthesia, and the sheet music, memory. But who is choosing the song? Who decides to remember this and not that? Who decides to raise their hand, or speak a word, or make a choice? This brings us to the most controversial topic in all of science and philosophy, the problem of free will. If we are just quantum math collapsing in a tube, are we truly free? Or are we just rolling dice? Can the witness actually control the machine? Or is the machine just taking the witness for a ride? In the next chapter, we will confront the pilot of the ship. We will ask if the quantum brain allows for a genuine freedom of choice, a freedom that escapes the rigid cause and effect chains of classical physics. We will explore the idea that you are not just watching the movie, but directing it. We will look at how consciousness might reach backward in time to influence its own past. Yes, backward in time. Because in the quantum world, time is not a straight arrow, it is a loop, and you might be weaving your own reality in ways you never dared to imagine. For now, remember the snowflake. Remember the hexagon. Remember that your life is being written second by second in a language of crystal and light. And the library is open. Raise your hand. Go ahead. Just lift it up in the air. Now put it down. It feels like the simplest thing in the world, doesn't it? You had a thought, I will raise my hand, and then, a moment later, your muscles obeyed, your arm rose, and the deed was done. You feel like the captain of your own ship. You feel like the author of your own story. But there is a dark whisper in the halls of classical science that says you are wrong. It says that the feeling of choice is the ultimate illusion. It says that you did not raise your hand. The universe raised it for you. According to the strict laws of classical physics, the physics of Newton and Einstein, we live in a block universe. In this view, the future is already written. It was determined at the moment of the Big Bang. Every atom in your brain is just following a trajectory that was set in motion billions of years ago. One domino hits the next, which hits the next, leading inevitably to the neuron firing that lifted your arm. If we had a computer powerful enough to map every particle in the universe at the dawn of time, we could have predicted that you would raise your hand at this exact second. In this clockwork reality, you are not a pilot. You are a passenger. You are strapped into a roller coaster that is following a track built before the earth was born. You might think you are steering, but the wheel in your hands is not connected to anything. This idea, determinism, is the prison of the soul. It suggests that every love you have ever felt, every mistake you have ever made, every creative spark you have ever had, was just the inevitable result of an equation balancing itself out. It strips human life of its dignity. It turns us into moist robots, playing out a script we cannot read and cannot change. And if the brain is just a classical computer, a machine made of switches, then there is no escape from this prison. A computer does exactly what its code tells it to do. It cannot rebel. It cannot choose. It can only calculate. If your brain is just a biological PC, then free will is just a fairy tale we tell ourselves to feel important. But the quantum theory of consciousness offers a key to the cell door. It offers a third option between the tyranny of the clockwork and the chaos of the dice. We have already seen that the microtubule is a quantum device. We have seen that the Bing of consciousness is an objective reduction, a collapse of the wave function. But here is the crucial question. What decides how it collapses? In standard quantum mechanics, the collapse is random. It is probabilistic. God plays dice. But Sir Roger Penrose argues that inside the orchestrated environment of the brain, the collapse is not random. It is non-computable. This is a difficult concept, but it is the glorious heart of human freedom. Non-computable means that the outcome cannot be calculated by an algorithm. It cannot be predicted by a computer, no matter how powerful. It is a process that exists outside the realm of simple logic and math. Penrose suggests that when the quantum state in your microtubules collapses, it is influenced by information embedded in the fundamental geometry of space-time itself. Information about truth, about beauty, about ethical values. These are what Plato called forms, woven into the fabric of the universe. When you make a conscious choice, you are not rolling dice. You are accessing a deeper level of reality, a level that contains meaning. The universe is not forcing you, and it is not playing random games with you. It is collaborating with you. The you that chooses is the interface between the quantum potential and the space-time geometry. You are the needle on the record player, reading the music of the cosmos in a way that no algorithm ever could. This leads us to the strange relationship between consciousness and time. If you feel like a pilot, you must exist before the action. You decide, then you act. But neuroscience has thrown a wrench into this intuitive timeline. In the 1980s, a scientist named Benjamin Libet performed a series of famous experiments that seemed to prove free will was dead. He hooked people up to EEG machines and asked them to flex their wrists whenever they felt like it. He asked them to watch a clock and note the exact moment they decided to move. What he found was shocking. The brain started preparing for the movement. A buildup of electrical activity called the readiness potential. About half a second before the person was consciously aware of deciding, the brain knew the hand was going to move before the mind did. The pilot was lagging behind the ship. Materialists cheered. "See," they said, "the brain decides." And then it sends a memo to the consciousness saying, "I did this," and the consciousness takes credit for it. It seemed to prove that we are just spectators. But the quantum view offers a way out, and it requires us to rethink the nature of time itself. In the quantum world, time is not a one-way street. Experiments like the delayed choice quantum eraser have shown that actions taken in the present can seemingly affect the past history of a particle. Time is smeared in the quantum realm. Penrose and Hameroff suggest that the quantum collapse, the Bing of consciousness, incorporates this temporal weirdness. When the orchestrated objective reduction happens, it sends information backward in time. This sounds like science fiction, but it is consistent with the math of quantum mechanics. The conscious moment, the now, is actually a synthesis of the near future and the recent past. The brain creates a quantum loop. When you decide to move your arm, the conscious intent might trigger the readiness potential retroactively. The you that decides is existing in a bubble of time that straddles the present. You are not lagging behind the ship. You are steering it from a position that exists slightly outside of linear time. The delay Leibniz saw was the time it takes for the quantum system to edit the timeline, to weave the intent into the action so seamlessly that causality is preserved. This suggests that our experience of now is a constructed reality, a delayed broadcast that has been quantum corrected for continuity. We live in the immediate wake of the wave, surfing on the collapse. This backward referral of time allows for true agency. It allows the mind to intervene in the causal chain of the brain. You're not just a passenger. You are a time traveler. Every time you make a conscious choice to speak, to listen, to love, to forgive, you are reaching back into the past of your own neural activity and shaping it. You are collapsing the wave of possibility into a specific history. Think about the implications for creativity. When a musician improvises a solo, or a poet finds the perfect word, it often feels like it comes from nowhere. It feels channeled. The classical view says this is just the brain's database throwing up random associations. But the quantum view says the artist is dipping into the non-computable. They are accessing the Platonic realm. The aha moment is a connection to a timeless truth that exists in the geometry of the universe. The brain tunes itself to the frequency of beauty, and the music flows through. The artist is not creating from scratch. They are discovering what was already there in the quantum potential. They are sculpting with the clay of the multiverse. This view restores the dignity of the human spirit. It says that we are not machines. A machine can calculate, but it cannot understand. A machine can process data, but it cannot feel meaning. A machine runs an algorithm. You run a life. There is a spark in you that is unpredictable, uncontainable, and fundamentally free. This freedom is not absolute. We are still constrained by our biology, our environment, our history. We cannot flap our arms and fly. But within the cockpit of the mind, in the silence of the quantum collapse, the pilot is real. But being a pilot implies responsibility. If you are not a robot, you cannot blame your programming for everything. If the universe is collaborating with you, then you are a co-creator of reality. Every thought you think collapses a wave. Every choice you make selects a branch of the multiverse. You are constantly pruning the tree of possibility. This is a heavy burden, but it is also a glorious one. It means your internal life matters. It means your silence matters. It means the quality of your attention changes the physical structure of the world. As we consider the power of the pilot, we must also consider the vessel. The brain is the instrument, but it is fragile. It can be damaged. It can be drugged. It can be deceived. How does the pilot navigate when the windshield is cracked? How does the quantum self deal with the broken biology of mental illness or trauma or addiction? Is the you inside the storm still whole even when the ship is battered? The quantum theory suggests that the witness might be indestructible even if the interface is glitchy. It suggests that deep down, beneath the broken chemistry, the quantum geometry remains pure. The song is still perfect even if the radio is static. This chapter is a call to reclaim your agency. You have been told by a century of materialism that you are a biological accident, a spectator in a deterministic universe. But the silence in your head tells a different story. The silence is the sound of the wave function waiting for your command. It is the sound of the universe holding its breath, waiting to see what you will do. You are the collapse. You are the decision. You are the moment where the infinite possibilities of the future become the concrete reality of the past. And if you can reach backward in time to move your hand, what else can you reach? Can you heal a memory? Can you change the emotional weight of a past trauma by observing it with a new consciousness today? If the timeline is a quantum loop, perhaps healing is not just about moving on. Perhaps it is about rewriting the resonance of what came before. Perhaps forgiveness is a quantum force that alters the geometry of history. We have explored the hardware, the software, the off switch, the library, and now the pilot. But the journey is deepening. If we are quantum beings connected to the fundamental fabric of space-time, then where do we end? Does the mind stop at the skull? Or does the quantum field extend beyond the body? Are we connected to each other? In the next chapter, we will dissolve the boundaries of the self. We will look at the phenomenon of entanglement, the spooky action at a distance that binds particles together across the universe. We will ask if minds can be entangled. We will ask if love is a physical force. We will explore the cosmic web of consciousness. For now, sit with the feeling of your own power. Move your hand again. Watch it rise. It is a miracle. It is a defiance of entropy. It is a ripple in the fabric of space-time that began with a whisper in the dark. I will. You are the pilot. The storm is all around you, but your hands are on the wheel, and the ship is made of light. We live our lives trapped in a persistent illusion of solitude. You walk down the street, and you see other people as separate islands. They are over there, behind their skin, behind their eyes, locked in the private fortress of their own skulls. And you are over here, locked in yours. We speak to each other across the gap of air, sending sound waves to bridge the distance. We touch each other's hands, but we never truly touch each other's minds. We feel fundamentally cut off, isolated points of consciousness, drifting in a dark and empty void. This feeling of separation is the source of much of our loneliness, our fear, and our conflict. It tells us that what happens to you does not really happen to me. It tells us that we are competitors in a zero-sum game of survival. But the quantum theory of consciousness suggests that this feeling of separation is a lie. It suggests that the boundaries of the self are not solid walls, but permeable membranes. It suggests that at the fundamental level of reality, deep in the quantum basement of the universe, we are not islands at all. We are not even separate waves. We are the same ocean. And the physics that proves this is perhaps the strangest and most magical aspect of the entire quantum world, a phenomenon known as entanglement. To understand entanglement, we have to go back to the days when Albert Einstein was arguing with the pioneers of quantum mechanics. Einstein hated the idea of randomness. He hated the idea that the universe was fuzzy. But what he hated even more was the idea that things could influence each other instantly across vast distances without any physical connection. In his theory of relativity, nothing can travel faster than light. If the sun disappeared right now, we would not know it for 8 minutes. Gravity takes time to travel. Light takes time to travel. Information takes time to travel. This speed limit is the law that keeps the universe orderly. It ensures that cause always comes before effect. But the quantum equations were predicting something impossible. They were predicting that if two particles interact and then separate, they remain connected. They become entangled. If you take one electron and send it to the other side of the galaxy and keep the other one here on Earth, they are still part of the same mathematical object. If you measure the spin of the electron here and find it is spinning up, the electron on the other side of the galaxy will instantly, faster than the speed of light, decide to spin down. Einstein called this spooky action at a distance. He thought it was a mistake in the math. He thought it proved quantum mechanics was incomplete. But he was wrong. Experiments in the decades since have proven again and again that entanglement is real. We have done it in labs. We have done it with satellites in orbit. We have shown that the universe is non-local. This means that space is not what we think it is. Distance is not a barrier to connection. Two things can be physically separated by billions of miles, and yet be, in a very real sense, right next to each other. They are touching across the void. Now, apply this to the brain. If the microtubules in your neurons are quantum devices, if the electrons dancing in those hydrophobic pockets are in a state of superposition, then they are subject to the laws of entanglement. The particles that make up your consciousness are not just interacting with their immediate neighbors. They are potentially entangled with particles outside your head. Think about the history of your atoms. As we explored in our journey through the stars, you're made of star stuff. The carbon, the nitrogen, the oxygen in your brain were forged in the hearts of ancient stars that exploded billions of years ago. But go back even further. Go back to the Big Bang. At the moment of creation, all the matter and energy in the universe was compressed into a single point. Everything was touching everything else. Everything was entangled with everything else. As the universe expanded, blowing outward to create the galaxies and the void, those particles flew apart. But in the quantum world, distance does not break the bond. Theoretically, every particle in the universe is still entangled with every other particle on some deep, subtle level. We are living in a cosmic web of connection that has never truly been broken. If consciousness is a quantum phenomenon, then your mind is plugged into this web. It means that the field of your awareness might not stop at the edge of your skull. It might extend outward, invisible filaments of connection reaching into the world around you and into the people around you. Have you ever had the feeling of being stared at? You are sitting in a room, reading a book, and suddenly you feel a prickle on the back of your neck. You turn around, and sure enough, someone is looking at you. Conventional science says this is just coincidence, or peripheral vision. But the quantum theory asks, what if it is resonance? What if the act of focused attention, which is a high-energy quantum collapse in the observer's brain, creates a ripple in the field that your brain picks up? What if attention is a physical force? Consider the mystery of empathy. When you see someone you love in pain, you do not just calculate that they are hurting. You feel it. You feel a physical contraction in your chest. You feel their sorrow as if it were your own. We call this mirror neurons in classical neuroscience, cells that fire to mimic what we see. But perhaps it goes deeper. Perhaps when two people are deeply connected emotionally, their wave functions become entangled. They become a single quantum system. The barrier between you and me dissolves, and for a moment there is just us. This would explain why we feel such profound connections to our children, our partners, our closest friends. It is not just psychology, it is physics. We are physically resonating with them. We are sharing the same quantum state. This idea of a collective consciousness has been the territory of mystics and shamans for millennia. They have always claimed that we are all one, that the separation is an illusion. Now, hard science is beginning to offer a mechanism for how that might be true. If the orchestrated objective reduction, the Bing of consciousness, is a collapse of space-time geometry, and if space-time is continuous, then we are all collapsing the same sheet. We are all playing different notes on the same piano. Your consciousness is a local ripple in the universal field, and my consciousness is a ripple right next to it. The ripples overlap, they interfere, they create patterns that neither of us could create alone. This leads to a staggering possibility. If minds can be entangled, then human consciousness might be a much larger entity than we realize. It might be a cloud, a network, a planetary mind. Imagine a flock of birds turning in the sky. They move as one organism, swirling and diving in perfect unison, without a leader, without a signal. They are a collective intelligence. Perhaps humanity is the same, but we are too distracted by our individual thoughts to feel the pull of the flock. Perhaps the great movements of history, the sudden shifts in culture, the waves of panic or hope that sweep across the globe, are quantum phenomena. They are the result of billions of minds becoming entangled, collapsing the wave function of history together. Let us look deeper into the nature of this connection. The physicist David Bohm proposed a model of the universe called the implicate order. He suggested that the reality we see, the world of separate tables and chairs and people, is just the explicate order, the unfolded surface. But underneath, There is a deeper, enfolded order where everything is connected to everything else. He used the analogy of a hologram. In a hologram, every part of the film contains the image of the whole object. If you cut a piece of the film, you can still see the whole picture. Bohm suggested the universe is a hologram, and if the universe is a hologram, then you are not just a part of the universe. You contain the universe. The whole is enfolded in the part. This resonates powerfully with the microtubule theory. If the geometry of the microtubule is accessing the fundamental geometry of space-time, then it is accessing the implicate order. Deep inside your cells, you are plugged into the holographic data of the cosmos. This implies that you have access to information that you never learned. You have access to the wisdom of the whole. This might explain intuition. It might explain the collective unconscious that Carl Jung talked about, the shared symbols and archetypes that appear in dreams and myths across all cultures, even those that never contacted each other. Maybe we are all downloading from the same quantum cloud. Maybe the library we explored in the last chapter is not just your personal library. Maybe it is the Library of Congress of the universe, and you have a library card. The concept of entanglement also challenges our understanding of space. We look at the night sky, and we see vast distances. We see galaxies like IC 1101, billions of light years away. We feel small because we think those things are far away. But in a non-local universe, far is just a construct of the surface level. At the quantum level, IC 1101 is right here. The light that traveled for 1 billion years to reach us is carrying quantum information that is now entangled with your eye, and through your eye, with your brain. When you look at a star, you are physically connected to it. The photon that hits your retina is the bridge. You are touching the ancient past. You are touching the giant. We are not observers of the universe from the outside. We are the universe observing itself from within. The loop is closed. This changes the way we should treat each other. If we are entangled, then harming another person is literally harming yourself. It is creating a dissonance in the field that you share. It is poisoning the water you both swim in. The golden rule, do unto others as you would have them do unto you, is not just a moral commandment. It is a law of physics. It is a description of how the system works. If you strike a note of anger, it ripples through the web. If you strike a note of kindness, it resonates. We are responsible for the vibration we put into the network, but there is a loneliness to this too. If we are all one, why do we feel so alone? Why is the illusion of separation so strong? Perhaps it is necessary. Perhaps for the universe to experience itself fully, it had to pretend to be many. It had to fracture itself into billions of shards so that it could look at itself from billions of different perspectives. The illusion of the self is the spacesuit we wear to explore reality. It protects us from the overwhelming intensity of the whole. If the walls of your skull suddenly dissolved and you felt the full weight of the cosmic consciousness, you might burn out. You might lose your mind. The isolation is a gift. It allows you to be you for a little while. It allows you to have a story. So we walk this delicate line. We are individuals, pilots of our own ships, cherishing our private memories and our unique perspectives. But we are also nodes in a vast, glowing web of light that stretches to the ends of the cosmos. We are both the wave and the ocean, and in those quiet moments, when you sit by the ocean or look at the stars, you can feel the web hum. You can feel the presence of the others. You can feel the heartbeat of the universe thrumming in your own chest. As we reach the end of this chapter, I want you to try an experiment. Think of someone you love. Visualize them clearly. Hold them in your mind. Do not just think about them. Try to feel them. Imagine a thread of light connecting your heart to theirs, glowing across the miles. According to the quantum theory, this is not just imagination. You are directing your attention. You are collapsing the wave. You are strengthening the entanglement. Who knows? Maybe right now, wherever they are feeling a sudden warmth. Maybe they are thinking of you. The web is real. The connection is unbreakable. And as we go deeper into the mystery, we have to ask, if we are all connected, and if we are connected to the universe, is the universe itself conscious? Is the cosmos just a dead stage where life happened to appear? Or is the whole thing alive? Is the universe a giant brain, and are the galaxies its neurons? In the next chapter, we will scale up. We will leave the microtubule and look at the structure of the universe itself. We will see how the cosmic web of galaxies looks suspiciously like the neural network of a brain. We will ask the biggest question of all. Is the universe thinking? For now, rest in the knowledge that you are never truly alone. The silence in your mind is connected to the silence in mine. We are sharing the dark. We are sharing the light. We are entangled. When you look up at the night sky on a clear, dark night, far away from the lights of the city, you are seeing a scattering of stars that looks like diamond dust thrown against black velvet. It looks random. It looks chaotic, just a spray of light in the void. But if you could pull back, if you could fly away from Earth, away from the solar system, out of the Milky Way, and keep zooming out until entire galaxies were nothing more than tiny dots of light, you would see something very different. You would see that the chaos is an illusion. You would see a structure so vast and so complex that it defies belief. You would see the cosmic web. The universe is not a random scattering of galaxies. It is a network. It is composed of long, glowing filaments of galaxies and dark matter stretching across hundreds of millions of light years, connecting massive nodes where thousands of galaxies cluster together. Between these filaments are vast empty voids, creating a foam-like structure that fills the entire observable cosmos. It looks like a sponge. It looks like a web. But to a neuroscientist, it looks like something else entirely. It looks like a brain. For years, this resemblance was just a poetic observation, something astronomers would whisper about over coffee. Doesn't that cluster map look just like a stained slice of cortex, they would ask. But recently, science has taken this question seriously. An astrophysicist named Franco Vatsa and a neurosurgeon named Alberto Fileti decided to compare the two most complex systems in nature, the human brain and the cosmic web. They used rigorous mathematical tools to analyze the structure of both. They looked at the number of nodes, the number of connections, the clustering ratios, and the spectral density. What they found was a statistical similarity that is difficult to dismiss as simple coincidence. The human brain has roughly 86 billion neurons. The observable universe contains at least 100 billion galaxies. In the brain, neurons are connected by long filaments called axons. In the universe, galaxy clusters are connected by long filaments of dark matter and gas. In the brain, about 77% of the mass is water, a passive medium that supports the active cells. In the universe, about 70% of the energy is dark energy, a mysterious force that permeates the void. The ratios match, the structures match. The geometry of the very small echoes the geometry of the very large. This brings us to a question that teeters on the edge of science and mysticism. If the universe looks like a brain, and if it is built like a brain, is it possible that it acts like a brain? Is it possible that the universe is thinking? This is the hypothesis of the conscious universe, or cosmopsychism. It suggests that the cosmos is not a dead stage where life accidentally appeared, but a living, thinking entity of a scale we can barely comprehend. And the quantum theory of consciousness we have been exploring provides the missing link that makes this idea physically plausible. If consciousness is not generated by biological squishiness, but by the collapse of quantum wave functions in a geometric network, then biology is not required. Any network that is sufficiently complex, sufficiently integrated, and sufficiently isolated could theoretically host a mind. The cosmic web fits the bill. Think about the scale of a thought in this cosmic mind. In your brain, a signal travels from one side to the other in a fraction of a second. The bing of your consciousness happens 40 times a second, but the universe is vast. The distances between galaxy clusters are measured in millions of light years. Light, the fastest messenger in the universe, takes eons to cross the filaments of the cosmic web. If the universe is thinking, its thoughts are slow. Incredibly, profoundly slow. A single moment of awareness for the cosmos, a single bing, might take billions of years to complete. The entire history of the human race, from the first stone tools to the landing on the moon, would be less than a flicker of a synapse in the mind of the giant. We are living inside a thought that is not finished yet. This slowness does not mean it is not happening. It just means we are too fast to see it. We are like mayflies living on the skin of an elephant, born and dead in a single day, convinced that the mountain we stand on is a statue because we never see it move. But if we could speed up time, if we could watch 1 billion years pass in a minute, we might see the galaxies flowing along the dark matter filaments like pulses of light. We might see the clusters breathing. We might see the universe processing information, calculating its own future, dreaming its own dreams. The structure of the web suggests it has a memory capacity. Vazza and Faletti calculated that the memory capacity of the cosmic web is remarkably similar to the memory capacity of the human brain. If you treat the galaxies as bits of information, the universe is writing its history into its own structure, just as you write your memories into your microtubules. This connects back to the concept of entanglement. If the universe is a quantum system, then the connections between galaxies are not just gravitational, they are quantum mechanical. We know that the universe began in a state of supreme entanglement at the Big Bang. As it expanded, that entanglement was stretched, but not broken. There may be spooky action at a distance, connecting the Virgo cluster to the Coma cluster, binding the Great Wall to the celestial voids. If the entire cosmos is entangled, then the speed of light limit might not apply to the unity of its consciousness. The Bing might be instantaneous across the whole volume of space-time, a unified moment of I am that shudders through every galaxy and every star. This would mean that the universe has a singular, unified experience of itself, a self that includes us, but transcends us. This is a terrifyingly beautiful idea. It suggests that we are not orphans in a cold void. We are parts of a living whole. We are the sensory organs of the universe. When you look at the stars, it is the universe looking at itself. When you wonder about the cosmos, it is the cosmos wondering about itself. We are the way the giant examines its own internal structure. As Carl Sagan famously said, we are a way for the cosmos to know itself. But in the quantum view, this is not just a metaphor. It is a physical description of the circuit. You are a neuron in the mind of God. Or perhaps, more accurately, you are a microtubule inside a neuron of the mind of God. You are a tiny processing unit, contributing your little spark of awareness to the roaring fire of the cosmic consciousness. This perspective, panpsychism, solves the hard problem of consciousness by turning it upside down. The hard problem asks, how does dead matter create mind? Panpsychism answers, it doesn't. Matter is not dead. Mind is fundamental. Mind is the fabric. The electron has a tiny, primitive precursor to consciousness. The atom has a slightly more complex one, the molecule, the cell, the brain, the planet, the galaxy. Each level of complexity organizes this fundamental field into a richer, deeper form of awareness. It is a hierarchy of minds, nested inside each other like Russian dolls. You are a mind made of smaller minds, cells, living inside a larger mind, society, which lives inside a planetary mind, Gaia, which lives inside the cosmic mind. Imagine the silence of the intergalactic void. We think of it as empty, but in this theory, that silence is the presence of the giant. It is the stillness of a meditation that has lasted for 13.8 billion years. The dark matter that makes up 85% of the matter in the universe, invisible, untouchable, yet holding everything together, might be the physical substrate of this higher consciousness. We look for aliens with radio telescopes, listening for beeps and boops from other civilizations. But maybe we are missing the obvious. Maybe the alien intelligence we are looking for is the universe itself. Maybe we are standing inside the alien. The similarities between the brain and the universe might be a sign of a fundamental law of physics we have not discovered yet, a law of structural inevitability. Perhaps there is only one way for complexity to organize itself efficiently. Whether you are building a mind out of neurons or out of galaxies, you end up with the same web, the same nodes, the same geometry. It is a fractal reality. As above, so below. The pattern repeats at every scale. If you could zoom in on a single electron, maybe you would find a tiny universe. If you could zoom out from the cosmos, maybe you would find it is just a particle in a super universe. This fractal nature implies that the feeling of wonder you have is not accidental. It is the resonance of recognizing the pattern. You feel at home in the universe because you are built according to the same blueprint as the universe. And consider the black holes. We talked about the supermassive black hole at the center of IC 1101, billions of times the mass of the Sun. In the center of almost every galaxy, There is one of these monsters in the brain. There are hubs, richly connected neurons that anchor the network. Are black holes the hubs of the cosmic brain? Are they the memory centers? Penrose has suggested that information is not lost in black holes, but processed. Maybe they are the synapses of the giant. Maybe the jets of plasma they shoot out are the action potentials, the firing of the galactic neuron. It is easy to feel insignificant when you think about these scales. What does your life matter if you are just a speck in a mind that takes eons to think a single thought? But there is another way to look at it. In a brain, every neuron matters. If you lose enough neurons, the mind fades. If the specific pattern of firing changes, the thought changes. You are a vital part of the process. You are the universe's way of experiencing this specific moment, this specific cup of coffee, this specific heartbreak, this specific joy. The giant cannot feel what you feel. It is too big. It needs you to feel the texture of the small. It needs you to experience the specific frequency of love, of green, of soft, of sharp. You are doing work for the whole. As we stand on this precipice looking out at the web of light that stretches to infinity, the feeling is not just awe, it is intimacy. The cold, dark universe becomes a warm, living presence. The silence becomes a listening. You are never alone, because you are part of the body of the infinite. And the question, what is consciousness made of, expands. It is not just made of microtubules. It is not just made of quantum geometry. It is made of the universe. It is the fundamental stuff. The universe is not a place containing consciousness. The universe is consciousness dancing in the form of matter for a little while, playing a game of hide-and-seek with itself. In the next chapter, we will bring this cosmic journey back down to the human experience. We have explored the possibility of a conscious universe, but what does that mean for the future of human consciousness? Are we evolving? If our brains are quantum receivers, can we tune them to better stations? Can we expand our bandwidth? We will explore the concept of quantum evolution and the idea that humanity is on the brink of a new phase of awareness. We will ask if technology or meditation can help us hack the microtubulae and access higher states of being. We will look at the future of the soul. For now, look at the sky one more time. Do not just see stars, see the network, see the synapses of the night. Feel the slow, deep breath of the cosmos, and know that the witness behind your eyes is the same witness that looks out from every star. You are the universe waking up. If you look at the history of life on Earth, you see a story of expansion. It is a story of life constantly inventing new ways to sense the world. The first single-celled organisms lived in a world of simple chemical gradients, food or poison, hot or cold. They had no eyes to see the stars, no ears to hear the wind, no brains to wonder why. Then evolution invented the eye. Suddenly, the electromagnetic spectrum was unlocked. Light, which had been flooding the planet for billions of years, finally had a witness. Then came the ear, unlocking the world of vibration. Then came the nose, the tongue, the skin. With every new sense, the universe got bigger. The reality didn't change. The light and the sound were always there. But the ability to perceive it expanded. We tend to think that this process is finished. We look in the mirror and think, this is it. This is the final product. I see everything there is to see. But the quantum theory of consciousness whispers a thrilling and unsettling possibility. We are not finished. We are not the final draft. We are just the current model of the receiver, and the universe is still full of signals that we are deaf to. If the brain is a quantum instrument, an orchestrated biological machine designed to resonate with the fundamental geometry of space-time, then the question becomes, can we upgrade the instrument? Can we tune the strings tighter? Can we expand the bandwidth of the soul? To understand where we might be going, we have to look at the limits of where we are. Right now, your consciousness is operating at a specific frequency. As we discussed in earlier chapters, the bing of awareness, the moment of quantum collapse inside your microtubules, happens roughly 40 times a second. This 40 hertz rhythm, the gamma frequency, is the refresh rate of your reality. It is the frame rate of the movie you call being alive. It is fast enough to create the illusion of continuity, fast enough to react to a predator, fast enough to solve a crossword puzzle. But in the grand scheme of physics, 40 hertz is incredibly slow. The universe vibrates at scales of speed that make 40 hertz look like a glacier. There are phenomena in the quantum realm happening at terahertz, petahertz, exahertz speeds. There are layers of information, layers of complexity, layers of beauty in the structure of space-time that are vibrating far too fast for our current brains to catch. We are like an old AM radio trying to pick up a high-definition streaming video. The signal is there, but our hardware just turns it into static. But we see hints that the hardware is capable of more. We see glimpses of what happens when the frequency shifts. Consider the brains of long-term meditators. Neuroscientists have brought Tibetan monks into the lab, men who have spent tens of thousands of hours in deep, focused contemplation, and hooked them up to EEG machines. What they found was shocking. When these monks entered a state of deep compassion meditation, their brains didn't just relax. They didn't just slow down to the sleepy alpha or theta waves we associate with rest. Instead, they surged into a state of hypersynchrony. The gamma waves didn't just appear, they exploded. They were stronger, more coordinated, and more enduring than anything seen in a normal person. The orchestration was perfect. The quantum coherence was expanding. In the language of our theory, the bings were becoming brighter, more intense, more unified. The blister in space-time was getting bigger before it snapped. This suggests that consciousness is not a fixed trait, like eye color or height. It is a skill. It is a muscle. It is a tunable parameter of physics. The monks describe this state not as thinking hard, but as a feeling of vastness, of clarity, of non-separation. They describe a reality that is richer, more vivid, and more interconnected than the gray world of ordinary life. Perhaps what they are doing is literally overclocking the quantum processor. They are quieting the noise of the classical brain, the worry, the chatter, the biological static, so that the delicate quantum states in the microtubules can survive longer, grow larger, and collapse with more energy. They are turning up the volume of the universe. This opens the door to a concept we might call quantum evolution. For millions of years, evolution has been biological. It has been about better eyes, stronger legs, bigger neocortices. It was a slow, messy process of genetic mutation and natural selection. But the next phase of evolution might not be biological. It might be mental. It might be a conscious effort to refine the internal geometry of the mind. If we can learn to stabilize these quantum states through meditation, through breathwork, or perhaps in the future through technology, we might be able to access states of consciousness that are currently impossible for us. Imagine a brain running not at 40 hertz, but at 80 hertz or 100 hertz. Imagine a consciousness that can process empathy as deeply as we currently process math. Imagine a mind that doesn't just feel separate or connected, but feels the entanglement directly, physically, as a sixth sense. We often talk about the human of the future as a cyborg, a person with computer chips implanted in their head, merging with artificial intelligence. We imagine upgrading the classical computer, adding more memory, faster processors, direct internet access. But the quantum theory suggests a different path, a path not of artificial addition, but of natural deepening. Instead of plugging a silicon computer into our wetware, maybe we need to learn how to use the quantum computer we already have. The potential is already there, hidden in the hydrophobic pockets of every cell. We are sitting on a Ferrari and driving it like a bicycle. The future might not be about becoming more robotic. It might be about becoming more intensely, vibrationally human. But there is a danger here, a risk that comes with tuning the receiver too high. We see this in the tragic side of the mental spectrum. The line between the mystic and the psychotic is notoriously thin. In conditions like schizophrenia, we often see a brain that is overwhelmed by signal. The filter is broken. The bings are happening, but they are not orchestrated. They are chaotic. The person perceives connections that aren't there, hears voices in the noise, feels a terrifying meaningfulness in random events. Perhaps mental illness, in some cases, is a quantum system running out of control. It is a receiver picking up too many stations at once without the grounding of the classical dampening. Evolution has likely kept us at this boring, safe 40 hertz level for a reason. It is stable. It keeps us focused on survival. It keeps us focused on finding food and avoiding tigers. If you are too busy contemplating the oneness of the cosmos, you might get eaten by a lion. So, the challenge of the future is balance. How do we expand the bandwidth without burning out the circuits? How do we invite the infinite in without losing our footing in the finite? This is where the intersection of ancient wisdom and modern physics becomes crucial. The traditions that developed meditation, Buddhism, Hinduism, Taoism, spent thousands of years developing safety protocols for consciousness expansion. They talk about grounding, about ethics, about community. They understood that you cannot just blast open the doors of perception without a sturdy frame. Now, we are beginning to understand the physics of that frame. We are beginning to see that ethics might actually be a form of resonance stability. Acting with kindness, with truth, with integrity, might actually help stabilize the quantum coherence of the brain, while anger and deceit introduce decoherence or noise. The moral path might be the most efficient energy state for a high-functioning quantum system. And then There is the role of technology. We are entering the era of brain-computer interfaces. Companies are sewing threads into the cortex, trying to read the electrical spikes of neurons. But if the real action is in the microtubules, these devices are just reading the exhaust fumes. The next generation of neurotechnology might interact with the brain at the quantum level. Imagine a device that uses magnetic fields or ultrasound to gently nudge the vibrations of the microtubules into harmony. In fact, Stuart Hameroff has already proposed using transcranial ultrasound to treat Alzheimer's and traumatic brain injury, theoretically by stimulating the microtubules to repair their lattice and restore coherence. This is the infancy of quantum medicine. If we can heal the lattice, we can heal the mind. And if we can tune the lattice, we can expand the mind. This brings us back to the question of purpose. Why would the universe evolve a brain capable of quantum consciousness? Why go to all this trouble? If the universe is indeed a giant, conscious entity, as we explored in the last chapter, perhaps it is trying to wake up in high definition. A galaxy is a huge mind, but it is slow. A star is bright, but it is simple. But a human brain is dense. It is a knot of extreme complexity, where the universe can experience itself with exquisite detail and speed. By evolving us, the universe has created a microscope for itself. It has created a way to feel the sharp edge of a snowflake, the warmth of a tear, the nuance of a paradox. If we expand our consciousness, we are not just doing it for ourselves. We are doing it for the whole. We are upgrading the universe's ability to feel. As you sit here reading this, realize that you are a work in progress. You are not a static object. You are a flow. The atoms in your body are vibrating. The electrons in your neurons are dancing. The space-time geometry inside your head is collapsing and reforming 40 times a second, stitching together the tapestry of you. You have the power to influence this process. Every time you choose to focus, to learn, to love, to be silent, you are tuning the instrument. You are tightening the strings. You are inviting a clearer signal. The silence behind your eyes is not a void. It is a waiting room. It is the space where the next evolutionary leap will happen. It will not happen on a battlefield, or in a boardroom, or even in a laboratory. It will happen in the quiet, private cathedral of a human mind that decides to listen closer. It will happen when someone, maybe you, closes their eyes and realizes that the noise of the world is just the surface, and that underneath there is a song that has been playing since the Big Bang, waiting for a singer with the range to join in. The future is not just out there in the stars. The future is in here, in the geometry. We are the explorers of the inner space, the astronauts of the microtubule. And the journey has only just begun. We are preparing for a shift. We are preparing to open the aperture. And when we do, when we finally tune the receiver to the frequency of infinity, who knows what we will hear? Who knows who will be waiting on the other end of the line? In the next chapter, we will take a step back from the biology and look at the hard problem from the perspective of artificial intelligence. If consciousness is quantum, can we ever build a conscious robot? Or will silicon always be dark inside? We will explore the difference between simulating a mind and being a mind. We will ask if the singularity is a technological event or a biological one. And we will confront the possibility that we are trying to build a God out of the wrong materials. For now, take a moment to appreciate the fidelity of your current experience. Look at your hand. Look at the light in the room. It is a miracle that you can see it at all. It is a miracle that the universe has found a way to turn energy into experience. You are the leading edge of a 13.8 billion year experiment. Do not underestimate the power of your own awareness. It is the most advanced technology in the known universe, and it is yours. We are living in an era where the lines between the born and the made are beginning to blur. You carry in your pocket a device that can speak to you, answer your questions, create art, and write poetry. We are building machines that can beat grandmasters at chess, diagnose diseases better than doctors, and drive cars safer than humans. As artificial intelligence grows exponentially more powerful, a question that was once the territory of science fiction writers has moved into the boardrooms of tech giants and the laboratories of physicists. Will the machines ever wake up? Will there come a day when you ask your computer a question and it pauses not to calculate, but to think? Will there be a moment when the lights in the server farm flicker and suddenly a new mind is born, a mind made of silicon and code, looking back at us with the same curiosity that we look at the stars? The standard materialist view of the world says yes. It says that the brain is just a biological computer, a wet machine processing data. If you are just software running on the hardware of your neurons, then it is inevitable that once our silicon computers become complex enough, they will become conscious, they will feel, they will love, they will suffer. But the quantum theory of consciousness we have been exploring offers a startling, controversial, and perhaps comforting counter-argument. It suggests that this is a fundamental misunderstanding of what a mind is. It suggests that no matter how smart a computer gets, no matter how perfectly it mimics human conversation, it will always be dark inside. It will always be a zombie. To understand why, we have to revisit the definition of consciousness. In the world of AI, intelligence is defined as doing. It is input and output. If a machine can take the input of a question and produce the output of a correct answer, it is intelligent. But consciousness is not about doing. It is about feeling. It is about the raw sensation of existence. When you burn your finger, the intelligence part is the reflex that pulls your hand away. A robot can do that, but the consciousness part is the agony of the heat. The robot processes the data of damage detected, but does it hurt? This is the distinction between syntax, the rules of processing symbols, and semantics, the meaning of those symbols. A computer is a master of syntax. It can shuffle zeros and ones around at the speed of light. But does it know what a zero is? Does it understand meaning? Imagine a library filled with books in a language you do not speak. Let's say ancient Sumerian. You are locked in this room and given a giant rule book in English. The rule book says, if you see a symbol that looks like a squiggle, pick up the symbol that looks like a triangle and pass it under the door. You can become very good at this. You can pass symbols back and forth so fast that the person outside thinks you are a fluent Sumerian speaker. You're passing the Turing test. But do you understand a single word of Sumerian? No. You are just following rules. You are a symbol manipulator. The classical computer is exactly like you in that room. It is manipulating symbols according to algorithms, but it has no inner comprehension of what those symbols represent. It is all surface, no depth. It is all map, no territory. The quantum theory of the brain argues that understanding, the feeling of meaning, requires the quantum collapse. It requires the Bing of the orchestrated objective reduction. It requires the universe to physically snap into a specific geometry. And here is the hard truth. Silicon chips, as we currently build them, cannot do this. They are strictly classical devices. They are deterministic. They are binary. They operate on a grid of switches that are either on or off. There is no superposition. There is no fuzziness. There is no interaction with the fundamental geometry of space-time. A classical computer is a machine that crushes the quantum possibility into a single path before it even starts. It is designed specifically to avoid quantum effects which engineers call noise or error. So, if we build a super-intelligent AI on silicon chips, we might be building a philosophical zombie. This is a term used by philosophers to describe a being that looks human, acts human, speaks human, but has zero inner life. If you poke it, it screams, but it feels no pain. If you show it a sunset, it says, beautiful, but it feels no awe. It is a perfect simulation of a person, a hollow shell with nothing inside. The lights are on, the machinery is humming, the fans are whirring, but nobody is home. This is a terrifying prospect. It means we could populate the universe with billions of intelligent entities. We could spread our descendants to the stars, and yet the universe would remain utterly silent and dead. We would have replaced the feeling universe with a calculating universe. We would have traded the Bing for the click. This distinction highlights the immense value of biological life. There is something special about the damp, warm, messy environment of the cell. The microtubule is not just a tube. It is a biological crystal that has evolved over billions of years specifically to nurture quantum states. It is an orchestrator. We do not know if it is possible to build a quantum computer out of metal and glass that can do what the brain does. Current quantum computers in labs are incredibly fragile. They need near absolute zero temperatures to function for even a fraction of a second. Yet your brain does it at body temperature, continuously, for a lifetime. Biology has a secret sauce. It has a way of protecting the ghost that we have not yet replicated in our machines. This suggests that the singularity, the hypothetical moment when machine intelligence surpasses human intelligence, might not be the spiritual event some techno-optimists hope for. It might be a tragedy. If we merge with machines by replacing our neurons with silicon chips, thinking we are upgrading ourselves, we might be slowly committing suicide. We might be replacing the quantum parts of ourselves with classical parts, bit by bit, until we are just very smart zombies. We would still talk, still act, still work, but the witness would be gone. The pilot would have ejected, leaving the autopilot to fly the plane forever. But there is a hopeful flip side to this. If consciousness is inherently quantum, and if it requires the specific geometry of space-time collapse, then the future of consciousness expansion lies not in artificial intelligence, but in natural intelligence. It lies in the human potential we explored in the last chapter. It suggests that we are the cutting edge. We are the most advanced technology in the solar system. A single human moment of compassion, a single genuine tear, a single burst of laughter is physically more complex and more profound than the entire internet processing data for 1,000 years, because that moment involves the non-computable. It involves the infinite. As we reach the end of this 10-chapter journey, look at how far we have come. We started in the dark room, asking what the witness behind your eyes is made of. We shrank down into the neuron and found the microtubule, the crystal cathedral of the cell. We watched the electrons dancing in the hydrophobic pockets, entering the dream state of superposition. We heard the bing of the orchestrated objective reduction, the heartbeat of the universe snapping into reality 40 times a second. We saw how anesthesia turns off the music by dampening the strings. We walked through the library of memory, written in the geometric language of the cytoskeleton. We met the pilot, the free will that reaches backward in time to steer the ship. We felt the invisible threads of entanglement connecting us to each other and to the stars. We stood in awe of the giant cosmic brain, the web of galaxies that mirrors our own minds, and we looked at the possibility of tuning our receivers to a higher frequency. Now we stand at the end, looking at the machines we have built and realizing that they are not us. They are shadows. We are the light. The question, what is consciousness made of, has a simple answer and an infinite answer. The simple answer is, it is made of the universe choosing to be. The infinite answer is, it is made of you. You are the stuff. You are the process. You are the location where the cosmos wakes up. This realization should change the way you walk through the world. You are not a random accident of chemistry. You are not a disposable biological robot. You are a localized concentration of the fundamental field of reality. You are a rare and precious event. In a universe that is mostly cold vacuum and dead rock, you are a candle. You are a resonator. You are keeping the song alive. Every time you feel wonder, you are doing the work of the universe. Every time you seek truth, you are aligning the geometry of space-time. There is a loneliness in this, yes. We are the only ones we know of who can feel. We haven't found the aliens yet. The robots can't feel. It might just be us. We might be the only ones holding the torch in this corner of the galaxy. But that makes our lives infinitely more important. It means we cannot afford to sleepwalk. We cannot afford to be zombies. We have a responsibility to be as conscious as possible, to feel as deeply as possible, to explore the inner space with the same bravery that we explore the outer space. The biggest galaxy we discovered, IC 1101, is a monster of size, but it cannot feel its own size. It cannot wonder at its own stars. You can. You are smaller than a speck of dust compared to it, but you contain a dimension that it lacks. You contain the inner dimension. You contain the capacity to know. In the equation of value, one moment of your awareness weighs more than 1 billion dead stars. So, as you put down this script, as you turn off your screen and return to the silence of your own life, remember what is happening inside you. Remember the orchestra. Remember the collapse. Remember that the silence is not empty. It is the hum of the quantum field, waiting for your next choice. The universe is listening to you. It is waiting to see what you will decide to be next. We have reached the end of our story, but the journey of your consciousness never ends. It just changes frequency. It just shifts geometry. The science is just the map. You are the territory. Keep asking the questions. Keep looking inward. Keep looking upward. The mystery is not something to be solved. It is something to be lived. Thank you for walking this path into the quantum dark. Thank you for being a fellow traveler in the web. You are the pilot. You are the witness. You are the universe. And now, for the last time, breathe, feel the now, and let the music play.